who dreamed a dream and got solved and blew the deal chasing after a lady. Now what I'm saying is that if you, the Hamilton Institute, any institute, a black curriculum must have good courses in African history, not just a subject that allude to it. It must have good courses in African womanhood. It must show now that one of the main reasons why the status of women was so much different in Africa is that the African recognized early in life something which Western men still are not ready to recognize. The duality of relationship and how he would have to put both of them together to create a single relationship. And that's why the king is referred to in the masculine gender. The king, in order to be total, had to have both the masculine and the female gender. And that you could not be a god without having a goddess. You're only half of a god until you get a goddess. Now when you look back at how all of it started, when you go back 10,000 years, when you look at the status of the Europeans and all that ice, seasons are short, he's got a short time to harvest the crop. 4 months, he's got to plant, harvest, and store. The wife must work. Every hand must work. If he gets angry with his wife and tells her to get out, she has to cop a plea to stay in. Because where is she going to go in all that ice? And if she goes to another household, that's another mouth to feed. So she's not welcome there. So she was beholden to him from the beginning. And this is part of her psyche of being beholden to him. She was never free, and she's not free now. Only now she's a slave on an air-conditioned auction block. Okay, you look at Africa, where the women started agriculture. The women got tired of the man going on to hunt. She began to plant gardens. She began to have a food supply so close to the house, and when she said, "Where are you going?" "I'm going on hunt." "No, we got enough food at home. Stay home." The forest was a drugstore. If you get ill, she can go into the forest and find some plant that will cure him. She prepared the food. She took care of the children. And when you married her, you didn't marry an individual. You married a dynasty. When you wanted to marry her, you didn't consult her. You consulted the head of her family, who called a council of the uncles. Then the females called a council. Then the other side met. And both sides agreed. Then you could make the approach. She's part of a totality. If you're cattle raiser, each side gives 10 head of cattle. The uncles give 10. So now, before they are married, they got 30 cows. Look at the mechanism put together. A lot of people feel ill at ease when I say that the romantic marriage is a Western invention. The "I love you" marriage. It lasts through the season. Sometimes it lasts through the summer. It may be gone by the winter. I'm talking about "I respect you" marriage. When you're putting together two families, sometimes two villages are coming together. Now suppose he get a knock on the head and get a little foolish and tell her to get out. She'd look at him like a fool and say, who's going to prepare your food? Who's going to take care of your children? Who's going to go to the forest and get something to cure you when you're sick? And besides, if she had to go out, there's plenty of places to go. She ain't got to go in no snow. You see the independence from the beginning? And the independence did not mean dominance. It did not mean what white women live think it means. It did not mean what you are foolish enough to think it means. It did not mean that you got to declare war on him. The line came down through her side of the family. Matrilineal. The foreigners introduced patrilineal. Nearly all African societies are matrilineal. That means in most cases the king's son can never be king, but the king's sister's son can be king. Eliminating competition. There are exceptions, the Zulus are exceptions. They're patrilineal. And yet in a patrilineal society like the Zulus, when Clarke, after the death of his mother, Ninda, when he decreed that there'd be no crop planted for a year, people accepted that. There was enough meat and wild vegetables. They can survive a year without planting anything. No big deal. 15,000 men to guard the mother's grave for a year. No problem. So they go and guard the grave. Then he said, no, he maimed the cows so that they could mourn for the passing of his mother. Nobody complained. And he said, no cohabitation for a year. The old ladies came together and said that our king is crazy. He has outlawed life itself. We cannot continue as a people if he's going to stop this activity. This item will not be so important except that I'm showing you that in a patrilineal society where that is male-oriented, the female council had enough power to order the ceremonial death of the king. Before he goes up to the moon, he's going to communicate with the gods and the spirits to give him the sign. If he don't get the sign, he ain't going. Is it all right with his God? Is it all right with his spirituality? This can get confusing because a whole lot of people think the Africans created a religion. Don't ever charge this crime to the Africans. I'm using my words advisedly. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have been turned into murder cults because once they emerged, they began to be used to justify the murder of other people. Christianity said if he's an infidel, he has no soul, and it's all right to murder him, it's all right to enslave him. Judaism said if he's not of our faith, it's all right. Islam said if he's not of our faith, we can put him to the sword. The Africans created an overall spirituality and a God of love. These foreigners who misunderstood African spirituality created gods of vengeance and created what I call a carbon copy of African spirituality. I am not less religious. I am more, because I say examine the carbon copies and entertain the idea of going back to the original. I didn't say change God. I didn't say change churches. I said change concepts, change approaches. Stay where you are, but look at it in a different way. Because the Africans created an overall spirituality where all life was under God, was a manifestation of God. And he did not have a weekend religion. He had a religion that was operational on his life every single day of the week. He did not have to build a temple with a whole massive space for praying, because he could pray anywhere. Akhenaten, who is accused of giving the world monotheism, and that's not true, and the Jews who said they gave the world monotheism, and that's not true. Monotheism, the concept of the oneness of God, was here all along. Akhenaten never said he gave the world monotheism. All Akhenaten did was to deal with the corrupt priesthood of his day that was restricting the movement of people based on the fact that if you go in a certain area, you're not under the protection of God. Because I'm the one that controls the message of God. All Akhenaten said that God was omnipresent. God was omnipotent. God was everywhere. God was in the wind. If you want to pray, pray to the wind. God was in the tree. God was in a lowly cockroach. But most important, God was in you. You look inside of yourself. Now, if you look at what the Africans gave the world, and if you read W.E.B. Du Bois and James Baldwin, you will find essays on the duality of American blacks. Two souls in one body, two personalities. What the Africans gave the world is a form of duality. And when we look at duality, the Africans use conflict to solve conflict. He used conflict to horn one conflict against the other and to arrive at a synthesis between the two conflicts. So therefore, conflict did good because conflict presented him with the opportunity of arriving at a synthesis in between the two conflicts. Now, if you understand what I'm saying, you will understand that neither Du Bois or Booker T. Washington was wrong. And yet, the difference of opinion between Du Bois and Booker T. Washington gave us the opportunity to analyze both of them and arrive at a conclusion that will not be positively Booker or positively Du Bois. And that is called synthesis. A way of solving a problem by looking at both sides of the problem and extracting from both sides what you need to form a single solution. We have stopped doing this because we were forced into a society that was individual as against the society that produced us that was plural. When you come out of a plural society, you are tolerant of different opinions. There were many ways of worshiping in Africa. But the Africa knew one thing, while there were different ways of worshiping, that there was one spiritual force for the universe.